that, yeah, I was thinking about that. It's like, huh. Last night I was like, yeah, right.
That's my lot.
Good evening, everybody. If you can stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, we had an executive session at 6 o'clock to discuss some personnel issues and some property issues. So with that, I'd like to recognize any resident or taxpayer of this area school district wishing to address the board about title programming or any other matter or concern or interest properly raised in public session. Please give your name and address and subject that you will be addressing, and it's requested that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to give everybody else a chance. Sam Shaw from Sarah, PA, 707 South Wilbur Avenue. I had just two things to comment on. One was I raised an issue back in October about our National Honor Society program. I see we did have some in January, February-ish that the kids did actually put in their applications, but we've not heard anything back on that. I just wondered if there's any comment on how that's going and if our National Honor Society is going to continue as a robust program at Sarah.
I can tell you that we're going to have inductions right after the play. We're competing for stage presence.
For stage president.
So
Okay.
it'll
as
be.
As far as I know, none of the kids have been notified, so that's I just wondered.
That's, yes, letters have not gone out from Miss S. Spoliansky. Thank you, Dr. Delozio. But yes, they are in the works.
Okay, thank you. And I also just had a quick comment about, I did start through some of the building agenda of, that you did get posted to the website and kind of looked through a little bit. I really liked how they did the whole assessment with prioritization of like, what's the 1, 2, 3, like what are the really things that need to be done over the next 8 years. But just kind of adding up what the cost for inflation were over 8 years, it looks like about $115 million for both schools. Pretty large amount, and kind of given what we've had going on with struggles with academics, replacing teachers, some, interest for kids in sports and those kind of things, I wondered if it's the appropriate time to think about what's our cost-benefit analysis to really moving forward with those projects versus having a conversation about actually merging schools.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shaw. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'd like to move forward with the Redskin Award. So the board would like to acknowledge our transportation team for their dedication and service to the students of SARE following the winter storm on March 9th, along with Ms. Jeannie Streeter, a Litchfield resident who provided snacks and drinks to the students that were on a bus that was in her driveway during the snowstorm.
If I can just add to that, the team from Mrs. Agnew's transportation and the Chambers individuals, our team was phenomenal that day. Mrs. Petrini, who runs our transportation, actually had to work from home that day. She was manning the radio and the telephone, and it was all hands on deck, and those drivers were amazing. And although it did take a long time to get the kids home, everybody got home safely, and I couldn't have been happier. I got the last call right before 3:30 that the last student had made it home safely, and so I waited for the drivers to get back into your station before I headed out myself, and although I have a much shorter drive. I'm just really happy, and so I visited the next day with a little treat for our drivers, not much, but just a show of appreciation for them, as well as the Chambers drivers that are at a distance, so we mailed something their way. And Mrs. Streeter, who just out of the goodness of her heart came out to offer some snacks and drinks for our students because they had been sitting there for a while, so I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Takes a team.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for all those quotes. Now a special presentation excited to share and celebrate the SARE Trolley that was established this year by a group of 8th grade students under the direction of Mrs. Powers. This program rewards students who rise, demonstrating their Redskin pride, and are awarded with tickets. And once a student ticket is fully punched 10 times, they may purchase items from the trolley.
Manager of the trolley.
I'm Carter Blyler, and I am the customer service manager.
And I'm Blyler, I'm the chief financial officer for the SARE trolley. How has the trolley helped our school? It provides materials to students that we need supplies to be prepared for class that day. It helps the student body become stronger and grow in the community. It gives students an incentive to be kinder and respectful in order to earn praise. It gives students something fun to look forward to every morning and can encourage them to keep a positive attitude and morale. It raised our school spirit and it taught us how to run a business.
These are the pictures that we took throughout the SARE trolley process. This one is our team, and I'm pretty sure it's the picture when we first put everything on the SARE trolley. These ones, we handmade these satchels with a Cricut, I think, to put our slogan on there. And these, this is just basically a picture of the items, a few of the items on the trolley.
This is what we have been wearing in our slogan. Pictured above is rodent all and holding stop. This picture was taken today.
These are the reward coupons mentioned earlier. After 5 hole punches, the student will be eligible to pick something off the SARE trolley. These hole punches will be given by teachers and can be earned for respectful behavior, good deeds, and following riot guidelines.
Every so often we send out surveys for students to recommend what they would change about the trolley, their favorite products, and see how satisfied they are with the services or their favorite products. And they send, they type out their own recommendations sometimes. One 8th grade student said, I like the vast variety of choices, and people who run it are kind and respectful. I also like how there are coupons for rides, which creates positive reinforcement from the 8th grade for high school students. Community support. Additional support for the incentive program as prizes are purchased from the trolley shopping. Reach out to any local business for possible donations. We would like to get the community involved in some more positive behavior projects for the school. So what we mean by getting the community more involved is maybe asking or sending out sponsorship letters to local businesses, and then we can help them with that. The SARE trolley has encouraged us to uphold a strong work ethic. We have learned the importance of communication with peers in a work environment. Throughout our experience with the SARE trolley, we have become business leaders and examples to others. We strive to be workers with someone to look up to. We are proud to say that we have shown much commitment during the building of this project and have learned what responsibility looks like.
Thank you.
Lily, do you and your team want to come over and share some of the products that are on the trolley? Just maybe point a few things out.
Okay, so I have a business where I sell slime. So we have some slime, and that's been a favorite for a lot of students.
students too, so we've sold a lot of that and brought in a lot of income from that. And we have a lot of school supplies, pencils, snacks. And we did a lot of surveys to ask students what like they want on the trolley, so a lot of it was based off of feedback from that.
We also have the trolley raffle bin. So when the student turns in a ticket, they'll get pulled, like their ticket will get pulled at the end of the week.
And we have some masks, and then we have some fidgets and candy right here.
The food's really popular on the trolley, mostly.
Yeah, we saw a lot of food.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Mrs. Morrell, put her on the spot. Mrs. Morrell, will you grab a picture of these kids while I'm standing around the trolley and we'll put it out, push it out?
Yes, put up.
Okay, everybody on the count of three say rise. 1. Is everybody done scurrying in the background? You're still in it, Mr. Claypool.
Oh.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Great job, guys. Thank you so much for sharing.
Is Mrs. Powers here? I thought I saw her. Thank you, Mrs. Powers, for spearheading this with your students.
All right, so moving forward, I'd like to move forward with the consent agenda. And recommend that it be approved for sections 1, the minutes, 2, operations, including instruction, volunteers, and scholarships, athletics, finance, and personnel, including our music teacher position, a van driver, cafeteria substitute, English teacher, school nurse, school psychologist, and our STEM teacher. That's the recommendation.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So if I could just take a minute, Mr. Latrini. I'd like to introduce Mr. Cameron King, who is slated to be approved as a music teacher this evening.
Hi, everybody.
Dr. Joe.
Mr.
Mrs. Rosenberger's here as well.
Oh, there's Mrs. I didn't see you back there. You're sitting behind. CSN for the certified school nurse position, Lindsay Rosenberger. Thank you for coming this evening.
Ms. Rosenberger, Mr. King, welcome aboard. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Oh, yeah. I guess.
Better wait for the vote.
Better wait for the vote. I'm gonna thank him anyway. Any further discussion? All right. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That's a good thing, because I already welcome you guys, right?
Congratulations, welcome.
So with that, we'll move to the discussion of the potential co-op sports athletes. Mr. Shaw.
Yes, Mr. Petrini, thank you. I'd like to make an amendment for the agenda item talking about co-op with sports for Athens. As a motion.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
We're just making the motion to amend the agenda, right?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mr. Shaw.
Okay. So the talks with Athens, they're asking to formally talk with SARE. And because of PIAA rules, we cannot co-op in football, boys basketball, wrestling, volleyball, softball, or girls track for the 22-23 school year. Because the co-op had to be in for PIAA when the enrollment numbers were sent in. That occurred in February, so that cannot occur. They would like to talk about in the future, talking about co-op for sports, except boys basketball, wrestling, girls track for the 23-24 year. So that's my motion, just to enter into formal talks with Athens. No vote will be taken tonight by our board and or their board at any future meetings until we agree to, if we vote, to formally talk with Athens, just discussions about co-oping sports. That's my motion.
May I ask you just to repeat that for Deborah Jacob, to put it in the minutes
Yep.
correctly? Thank you.
You want me to start from the beginning, Mrs. Jacob?
No, just the
Just the motion at the
of
end.
what you're going to
My
do.
motion is that we formally talk with Athens about co-oping sports.
Any specific programs or
Well, I already-
just in general?
Right now in general, but then specifically will be those
Okay.
sports. But we cannot do these sports I already mentioned for 22-23 because it's too late by PIAA rules.
So we have a motion, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just wanna say, the thing, I was at the meeting, and the thing Athens brought to us a list of sports. It was just informational, but the thing is, we do have some sports here who don't have the numbers to field a team, correct? We've already done it with soccer and swimming. And as a parent, I would hate to see my child not be able to play because we as a community aren't willing to allow them to play at another school. So if a sports team doesn't have enough, or meet the minimum number, I think it's fair to look at options so that they still can play. I also don't think it's fair to say that every sport needs to be co-op, because there are sports that field full teams that do exceptionally well and have the numbers. I think you have to find, we as a board will have to find a balance of what sports need that opportunity and what sports are fine as they are.
Mr. Petrini, before we vote, I would also like to point out that when Northeast left us high and dry at the 11th hour on boys soccer, Athens agreed to co-op boys and girls soccer with us and swimming. So it was nice of them to do that. So I'd like to point that out.
Any other discussion? I'd just like to add, I hope in the discussions with Athens that it's not I hope they look at co-oping with us, meaning that they're willing to use our facilities. You know, they're willing to use our track, whatever we want to do, and it's not just one-sided where we just bus all our kids down there. So I hope that's something you guys take into consideration when you discuss that.
That will be part of the discussion.
Yeah. All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Any other opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Petrini, may I ask, is there any sports that are being excluded from being looked at, or is this all sports open at this point in time being discussed?
Hold that thought until the end for us, please.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so with that, upcoming committee meetings. Finance Committee held on April 11th at 5:30 in the conference room in the administrative office. Athletics Committee and Recreation, or Athletics and Recreation, April 11th at 6:30. Is that going to be changed to?
Change to May 9th.
May 9th? At 6:30?
Here in the library.
Here in the library. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to Mrs. Morrell.
That was a very nice presentation by the students, so I'll kind of piggyback off on to that with regard to our
PBIS cart at the elementary school. It goes out every other Friday. We vary the floors that it goes on with start times. The children also are allowed to turn in their tickets. Their names are also on the back of their tickets, and once they turn in those tickets, they can also be used for a bigger prize at the end. So there's a little bit of similarities there, which is nice to see. So kids move from one school to the other, they'll still have that opportunity to, I guess as they say, get caught being good. So that's a nice thing to see for our kids. Our enrollment is 495, with 10 of those being in SOLA. Mrs. Edgerton still has 28 students in the backpack program, 4 in the check-in, check-out program. And as I said, 10 for SOLA. We are ramping up towards PSSAs in April and getting some final dates down for some activities for the kids to participate in April and May. So good things coming everybody's way. So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Morales.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hendrick.
So our Sarah Students Against Destructive Decisions, or SAD, is promoting awareness of National Drug and Alcohol Facts Week, which is the 21st, today through the 27th. Throughout the week, SAD will be providing student population with facts about drugs and alcohol and how they affect us and the world around us. Students have been invited to take a test on their knowledge of facts about drugs and alcohols, and if they complete that quiz by Thursday, they're eligible to receive a prize. And this is an annual week-long health observance to inspire dialogue about the science of drug use and addiction among youth. We had 2 scholarship challenge teams compete in the scholarship challenge this year. One team was comprised of seniors and the other juniors. Both competed valiantly, but did not advance to the final round. High school enrollment, 454. It's been right around 455 to 460 for most of the year. And we have about 40 kids in SOLA. And the cast of The Wizard of Oz is working hard to put the final touches on their performance. Curtain goes up on the musical next Friday, April 1st. It's not a joke. And there will be 2 performances on Saturday. There will be no show on Sunday this year. And since Mr. Cole isn't here, I will steal this. There is a meet and greet, the cast. They will be in character this Thursday at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. And everybody will be in character except the Wicked Witch. She's going to be nice on Thursday and not be, even though she'll be dressed, she won't be in character. We didn't want to scare any little ones away from coming to the play. That's it for me.
All right, thank you very much. Being that Mr. Cole's not here, did he leave you with any?
No, but we're going to have a blast report. I needed to put blast on instead of TCC this time, so Mrs. Agnew's going to do a blast report for IU. Yeah.
Right.
I'll just go over the last one because it's been 3 months, but we had a presentation on ELECT, which stands for Education Leading to Employment and Career Training, and is focused on dropout prevention for pregnant and parenting teens. ELECT is designed to assist eligible students who are pregnant and are parenting by encouraging them to remain in school with regular attendance, to obtain a diploma or high school equivalency, and secure post-graduation employment and or higher education. The program provides educational opportunities to develop the skills to become competent parents and self-sufficient adults. This year, our ELECT program has served 56 students to date, which is a 35% increase in students served annually since 2018. It's quite a program, and it is well worth for a lot of kids. It really helps them out. Harrisburg Updates, they anticipate additional statement of work to support accelerated learning for districts. PA school assessment data has been released, and they finished the state mandates and checklist.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so they got
Yeah,
their,
you can.
yeah. And Department of Health updates, coordinating mass distribution across member public and non-public schools, and continuing support with school-based testing and dissemination of vaccination sites. So they continue to work on what they need to, and they're still doing a really good job down there. They're busy, constantly helping districts, and they're doing a lot for us, so we appreciate everything that they've done. That's all I have, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that report. We want to continue on with Saturday Creek.
Sir, open forest, went over really good.
Yeah, we had a
Yeah,
good conversation on the 7th, yes.
Yeah, so, they're getting things ready probably next week. I think we start doing cleanup work up there, if anyone wants to volunteer to help. People are still walking up there using the trails and stuff now that it's some of the nicer weather that we've had. Otherwise, I believe that's all.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank the kids again for coming and presenting the Sarah Trolley. That's awesome. I love it when you guys come to the board meetings and show off all the good things you guys do. I'd like to thank the folks once again that helped out with the bus run on our storm. It was probably pretty scary for some of those kiddos that got caught on that, and it's great to see community members come together and help us out. It's just awesome. So, yes, sir.
I have a correction. I apologize. The meet and greet is at 6 p.m., not at 7 p.m. The other evening shows are at 7 p.m., so meet and greet on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Thank you, Mrs. Cole, for keeping me on top of things like you always do.
Oh, she's watching.
She texted me immediately. Screwed up.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Yes, thank you for keeping us straight. Dr. Dolores?
Okay, well, she was my first shout out for FBLA and traveling with the team to Mount View with Miss Cooper last week. So if you hadn't heard, there were some shenanigans over in Snyder last week on March 17th. So they did try to catch the leprechaun. They had no success, but there was 100 traps on the kindergarten floor, and the leprechaun came in and turned some chairs over and had a great time with the kindergartners, and they did a little search and find with the community relations team. So thank you to the team members that joined us over there and just had a fun afternoon with those kindergartners. We had a good time. So community relations is planning some events both in the community and in the school community. And so we went over last Thursday and had a good time with that. Today is World Down Syndrome Day, and we had Crazy Sock Day today and Dress Down Day to do a collection and a donation to a local entity, and Mrs. Hannafin and Mrs. Swartley are spearheading that project, so it'll be interesting to see how much money it's raised. And Mrs. Schwank, not Mrs. Swartley, sorry, Mrs. Schwank participated in that. And a shout out to Mrs. Abby, our new senior class advisor for this year. There's been a lot of activity, and there was a huge fundraiser on Friday evening where students got dressed up and came for a dance decorated, I think, by the senior class, and I think it was fun by all that evening, and it was just nice to see a lot of activity going on. Okay, thank you.
With that, does anyone have anything else?
I do, Mr. Green. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. King and Mrs. Rosenberger for being here. It's nice to put a face to a name of new hires in our schools, so thank you for coming. I also, again, like to thank our Scholarship Challenge team at the Sayre Theater. It was well attended, and our team did very well. Even though we weren't on the winning side of the score, our team did very well. Thank you.
You have your question? You remember?
Yes, I do. Just questioning if the discussions regarding co-op of sports will exclude any sports, or is that open, the discussion's completely open to all sports at this point in time?
I think they were excluding
I
certain ones.
understand certain sports for the upcoming year are not allowable based on PIAA rules, but I was talking, you said this is a general open discussion. Will discussions be made of future sports? Is it only for the upcoming year, or is this going forward where we're gonna potentially discuss all sports?
So I can answer that for you the best I can.
Okay.
So what you already said, because of PIAA rules, we cannot co-op in football, boys basketball, wrestling, volleyball, softball, and girls track for 22-23. For 23-24, right now for them, they do not want to co-op in boys basketball, wrestling, or girls track, but everything else is open. But they would need to know by fall for the PIAA cycle. That's what happened to us in soccer, because it was a one-year agreement, and we were out of the PIAA cycle. Okay? So everything is open except what they've already said, and that's subject to change.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Thank you.
Due to enrollment.
Right.
On their side and on our side.
Understood, yep.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Do we have minimum numbers established for all of our sports?
We do, actually. So for the 21-22 school year, I went through and did this, and if nobody minds, I'll just quickly run through it. Baseball, minimum number required is 11. This year we have 25 people registered. Boys basketball, 9, 17 were registered. Boys cross country, 4 is the minimum, 2 were registered. Football, 25 minimum, 33 were registered. Golf, 5 was the minimum, 8 were registered. Soccer, the minimum was 14. We had 4 once the co-op went through. I vaguely remember that being 6 or 8 originally, but some of the kids chose not to go through the co-op. Boys swimming, the minimum was 7. We had 0 at the end after the co-op. I think there were 1 or 2 originally. Track, 10 is the minimum. We had 14 registered. Wrestling, again, 10 is the minimum, and 13 were registered. On the girls' side, basketball, the minimum was 9. We had 10. Cheer, the minimum is 7. In the fall, we had 11. In the winter, we had 6. Cross-country minimum is 4, and we had 4 registered. On the girls' soccer side, again, it was 14, and we had, I think, 6 originally registered. I believe it was 2 that went over and participated in the co-op. Softball, 11 was the minimum number. We had 16 registered. Swimming, 7 was the minimum, and I think we had 4 registered and 2 actually participated, some in the co-op. Track, minimum is 10. We currently have 7 registered, and volleyball for the minimum is 9, and we had 17 registered.
So when you say a minimum number, but we don't meet the minimum, is the process that by a certain date, if we don't meet the minimum, that we don't do that sport?
Yeah, actually, there
It
is.
sounds like no. It sounds like we still go on.
Well, it depends. There's a minimum number for sports procedure that went through the athletic committee over the better part of probably 2 years, that developed the numbers, that also developed sign-up dates. So for fall sports, we want to have the sign-ups done by June 1st, end of May, June 1st, so we can go through and find out if there's sports that are low. Then we ask, we look at things like co-op, do we do the sport anyway? For a couple of the sports where you heard we were under the minimum numbers, in the procedure it says, for like boys and girls track, boys and girls cross country, swimming as well, if we have the numbers on one side because the coach is the same person typically and because they travel to the same places at the same time, then we said, well, if we have 12 boys and 6 girls for track, we would run both of those anyway, because it doesn't really hurt us financially to not do that, because they all get on the same bus and all those kinds of things. So you look at that, they go around, they try to improve the numbers, try to get more people out. And then we were looking at co-ops and those kinds of things as well. And now that we're getting a better idea with some of the rules around the co-ops and those things, we'll probably have to modify some of this. We also talked about, someone brought up at the athletic committee meeting last week that maybe we need to hire our coaches even earlier than we do, and maybe extend like instead of a 1 year, do a multiple year, kind of contract, so coaches can understand, have more time to kind of help with some of those things. Now we're trying to get them hired at least a season before, and get the official paperwork done, but that's something we've kind of got to go back and look at. And there's also, it's not really a part of the procedure other than to say work with the recreation program, but there's been a whole lot of stuff done recently and in the last year or two since Mr. Alt's taken over the rec program and Mr. Feld is the AD before me, kind of started building the relationship between rec and the varsity level sports, because I think everybody in the room understands that you need the kids at the rec level to gain the skills and kind of move on and run through those things. So there's been a lot of stuff that's just happened with trying to get more kids out for the programs. last summer with summer rec, you know, Mr. Alt set up with the rec programs that there were, 1 week was different sports and kids could go out and try the different sports and do all that kind of stuff. And I know several coaches also helped out with that. We're hoping to get some more coaches out there this year. I can't remember if I've talked at the board meeting, but I know I've talked at the committee meetings. You know, this winter, girls rec basketball played at halftime of a girls' game. By all accounts, that was a wonderful thing, except for the official was lousy. But that was me, for those who don't remember. We also did rec wrestling during a varsity meet with Athens, and that was pretty awesome because it was pretty well packed house that night. And, you know, every 2 or 3 pounds, kids were coming out and wrestling and boom, 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 and went through. It was pretty fun to see. We're trying to do more of those things with the rec program to kind of get numbers up. I think we've talked in general with coaches about having more of a responsibility, not just at the, you know, head coaches, not just for what's going on at JV and junior high, but also talking to those rec coaches. I know on the boys' side, there was a lot of discussion this year. And there was discussion on the girls' side too, you know, to the point where they did some things last summer. They did some open gyms and those kinds of things for the littler kids. So there's a lot, and you know, just other things. Baseball and softball show up at opening day ceremonies with all the kids on the varsity team. So that way, it's, you know, just getting out there so those kids see that, and you know, hopefully that kind of gets them interested and keep going until they can get into the junior high and get into the junior high sports and keep moving forward with that. So there's a lot going on that people have been trying to work through here in just the last, you know, 9 months, but it's something that will take time. I mean, the numbers aren't gonna increase overnight, but it is something that, you know, we're hoping with time that will help improve the numbers for the sports here in the district.
I'd like to clarify something, Mr. Green. Just because the people signed up doesn't mean that we had all those actual numbers participating in sports either. Once the season's in season, there was a lot of sports where we didn't have enough people. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, sure, that absolutely happens, but the way the procedure's set up, we run it off the registrations, and that's kind of what you have to do. And there are some sports, wrestling started with 13 and ended with 1 at the end of the year, but, you know, that was a lot of things that happened between injuries and academics and things like that, you know, caused some issues. So, sure, absolutely, Mr. Pertini, that is accurate.
Thank you. Mrs. Alt, I believe that.
I'm just wondering if you have the numbers for some of those Athens participants, and how much room they actually have to absorb our athletes?
Do not have that because we had to agree just to formally talk with them. That'll be in the future, once we talk with them.
So how is that going to affect things moving forward? Because you're saying you need to have sign-up because there's a deadline, but those numbers you mentioned there are this year's numbers, correct? How do you know what the numbers, how are you going to know our numbers before the deadline for next year?
It has to be by June 1st.
For all, but I'm saying for something like a spring sport, for instance.
We're gonna have to discuss that with them. Right? They have to know by a certain date to enter into the co-op if we do. And it's different for fall than it is for winter. Maybe Mr. Hendrick knows the answer to that.
I'm not sure of the question. I mean, we know our numbers, but we're not gonna know our sign-up numbers until closer to the season.
Right. But the PIAA rule is a certain rule, right? You have to have it in by a certain date.
Correct, but we can
It's a
do
2-year cycle.
no co-ops for next year if they impact classification.
So over your data over time, over the last 5 years, do you have data of your numbers for each sport, and if you've had ups or downs, and what your prediction is going forward? I mean, you know who graduates, so you could have some, you're probably plus or minus 3, I would assume,
We
for
can,
predictions.
yeah, we can predict pretty close. I mean, one of the
Data
reasons
metal like that.
we're in the, you know, our numbers right now, all of our sophomores, juniors, and seniors are all under 70 students per class. They're smaller classes.
And Jill, your question is a good question. So it is kind of an unknown, right? So that's why they're requesting us, if we do enter into that, they gotta know the numbers, because that's what happened to us in soccer, right? Right, Northeast chose not to co-op with us because of the playoffs, and now, because we didn't get it in, they can't co-op with these sports even if we wanted to in the fall, because the PIAA deadline was in
But I'm
February.
back to the conundrum of, athlete, like in our position, playing a varsity sport, if you're gonna do this every 2 years, that puts us in a position where we're gonna miss out on a year of play potentially. So the 2 years, it doesn't work for some people when they're trying to make a decision.
But that's a PIAA rule, right?
Correct.
We have no say on that. It's PIAA rule, and they have to approve all co-ops
Right,
anyway.
but you're making the decision based on, right now, a number that doesn't even exist.
Right
Right.
now, we're not making a decision, we're just discussing it.
Right, but time is of the essence, I discussed that before, for someone entering varsity.
And it still has to be approved by the PIAA. There's nothing to say that they're gonna approve it. Even if it got to that stage, PIAA has to approve it, and it's a 2-year cycle, correct, Mr. Hendrick? And they're the ones that make the rules, we don't.
So let me try and understand, would we be interested as SARE in doing a co-op only on a 2-year cycle and then potentially cycling back? Because I would look at something, for instance, if you try and do that with football, the amount of semantics involved, the logistics involved in running a football team year to year is extremely different than running a cross-country team year to year. So is this something that you're looking to do long-term? Or are you discussing what it would look like to do this long-term over a long-term contract with Athens? Or is this something that you're gonna be looking at sport by sport, 2-year cycle by 2-year cycle?
2-year cycle, sport by sport.
So potentially, football could disappear in SARE for 2 years and come back 2 years later?
Potentially. Depends on the numbers. I mean, there's a lot to it, as you just said,
Right,
so.
that's why I'm just trying to understand.
But that's what we have to discuss
The
with them.
process.
We haven't even gotten to that point yet. We had a
Right.
vote tonight just to formally talk to them. There's a lot of things to work out, obviously.
Sure.
One thing I hope is that we don't lose our identity in all of this, right? I hope is, the Sayre School District, we get to do what's best for our kids.
Certainly, I could not agree with that statement more. I'll leave it at that.
And I know we can, this can go on forever.
Sure.
Right, and there's a lot to discuss, and, right now, I think that the motion was just to have an open discussion with them, so.
Right, I want to say one thing. Nobody from the community or the school came to the board and said, this is what we want. It was some members on this board. So if you're looking at a need, the administration says, we don't need to do this. Administration did not ask us to do any of this. We just had people that are doing it. In the end, it's gotta be a vote by this board and their board. Doesn't make sense. We did the girls, we did the soccer because we didn't have enough kids. But we planned on 2 years if we can get our program back. That's what, Barry said. We're going to the rec program to say, we need to get these kids involved. What can we do to build our programs at the rec level? Because our rec was decimated. We had nothing there. So we're trying to build the programs that way. Would, honestly, you think football or baseball would combine? I would say no. What other sports would we do? I would say none, that we're doing today. I don't know what they're gonna discuss, I have no idea. But as far as our numbers, we're good in all these other sports, but we have 5 or 8 girls soccer players, you just can't have a team. We did that to say, we want them to have something to be able to at least play. But people have to realize, and the public and the administration, is that what you want? Do we want to combine all our sports teams? We don't need to do that. I don't know why we would be in a discussion, but that's what the vote is tonight. So if that's what they want to do, they can do that. But it still would have to come back to this board, and it could be a different board in 2 years. And that vote would be by that board, whether they wanted to do that. So you have to keep that in mind also.
One concern I want to express, Greg Keely, I just heard the track team, so it sort of hurt my interest. You're talking about the boys team, and I'm guessing if they take the girls team, that's gonna put them up above the classification. So I'm just not understanding why. I guess the reason I'm expressing this concern is because probably for the last 2 or 3 years, the girls have been able to run track because of the boys, with minimal numbers. So if you send the boys to Athens, the girls team will be decimated. The girls won't run either.
Mr. Claypool already said that, right? That even if we have low numbers, we still have the meet, right?
Well, what I'm saying though is what he said, we're allowed to have a girls team. Our girls team is under the minimum number this year. And I don't know if it's gonna get much better next year to get up to that 10. But because the boys are probably at 14 or 15 now, we're able to have both boys and girls track. So what I'm saying is the girls track team for the last 2 years have been dependent on the boys team numbers, because they don't meet the minimal numbers. But since the boys team met the minimal numbers, we can have a team because we're the same coaches. So if the boys team goes, and our girls track team only has the numbers they have, which right now, 7's an inflated number. I mean, the ones that are showing up. I mean, we have a slew of kids coming down the road, 6th, 7th grade, but next year, we're not gonna meet that minimal number for girls. That means that the boys go, the girls team won't be able to run. That's my concern. And if it's not because PIAA is not gonna bump in the numbers, my question is, why don't they want the girls to go forward? That would be something to consider and to look at, because if the boys go over, the girls won't have a team.
Okay.
And just on the other note too, just talking about Northeast, I mean, we really can't blame them for the decision that they made. For them to pull out, that's just my own little slant. But, I mean, we can't blame them by saying, you guys can't go in playoffs with us. You know, I don't think that'd be fair to ask them anyway. So, just consider that when you're talking about it.
Thanks, Mr. Hewitt. Mr. O?
Can, at any point, the coaches be part of the conversation? We met last week and just discussed some things. It was interesting to get every coach's sports point of view. And Greg bringing up what he just did is a valid point. If you guys are having these discussions without us and the possible numbers, I don't think that's fair to the coaches, to the sports, to the kids, or the community. So I think the coaches need to be valued in this conversation. You know, that to me could be fruitful for everybody to do the best for our kids. And where would that take place in the athletic committee?
Yep.
Okay.
You already know this because we talked about it last week.
Well, it was kind of, some things were kind of muted, but if we can do that, that's.
And Mr. Hickey's right too. If we don't have minimum numbers, then we have to pause the sport, that's a board vote. And if we decide to co-op between the two schools, that's a board vote as well, right? So it's a board vote, and once all the facts come out, then we make a decision and vote from there.
I just want to make sure all the facts are getting to you guys, you know, and what the coach's point of view is, because we're the ones on the ground trying to make these things work. You know, in the rec department, I'm on the ground trying to get the numbers up, and we've done that in a lot of things we've done. You know, we can also bounce ideas off one another so we can bring more kids in. So I just don't want a decision made without the input of everybody who's impacted here, parents, coaches, you know, everybody. So, you know,
That's understood and appreciated, the work that you've done, and we talked about that last week,
well, it's
right?
not anything that I've done, I appreciate, I just want everything kind of looked at before we go down that road.
It needs to be, Mr. O, thanks.
And that's what we're going to do. That's what this process is, to formally talk on both sides.
Okay. No, and I'm fine, but I just want everybody to know, all the coaches to know, you know, that we can meet and still discuss this.
I'd like to make one comment. Why am I sitting here my first time ever, and it seems like every Athens is short on a sport. Why wouldn't Athens be coming here? Or vice versa? Why does it seem like everything that's been said is our students going to their school?
That's going to be discussed, you have a valid point.
No, but
Mr. Catrini already said it.
But everybody here has said when we ship them off to Athens, or when we ship them, why is Sarah not being discussed as the landing spot versus
It will
the
be,
departing spot?
it will be. They just went to Athens for soccer, for example, because we didn't have enough members for a team and we weren't gonna have the sport.
Why was Athens chosen, I guess, is where was the decision process there?
Because
I'm sorry.
we only can co-op either Northeast Bradford School District or Athens. It has to border you.
I guess what I'm saying is why were our kids going to Athens for that program instead of their kids coming here for that program? Is the question I'm asking.
Right.
They had numbers.
We had-
Accurate or above
They
the.
had a team and they were ready to go, and without them, we wouldn't have played.
We had no numbers, sir, for soccer.
Understood. I was just making sure that it's going both ways, because like I said, I heard Mr. Quattrini say, I hope we don't lose our identity, but why would we be giving out all of our stuff to them versus the other way around?
Well, to clarify, Athens did reach out to us this time.
Correct.
For,
We reached out to them the
we
first
reached out
time
to them
for
first. they
soccer and
reached out to
swimming.
I'm perfectly okay with co-oping, I just wanted to clarify why we would only, it seemed like it was only going one direction and not the other.
Needs to be fair across the board.
Yes, sir.
All right. So with that, does the board have anything else?
Second.
Got a motion to second for adjournment, all in favor?
Right.